Hey everyone, it's Sevy, and I'm here to test if the Alley Flash is a good weapon on Xingqiu compared to the Sacrificial Sword and the Skyward Blade. The reason why I think the Alley Flash would be good on Xingqiu is because it has the second highest base attack among swords and has a significant damage buff that works off the field too. Because Xingqiu is a very powerful off-the-field sub-DPS, in theory, the Alley Flash seems viable. But the popular opinion is that Sac Sword is still the best because of Xingqiu's long E cooldown and costly elemental burst, and Skyward Blade too because of its high base attack and energy recharge. So let's compare it. Here are my stats and levels for Xingqiu. My Xingqiu is on C4, and one of his constellations allows his burst swords to lower Hydra resistance. For artifacts, I have a plus 20 ER Sands on him, a plus 16 Hydra damage goblet, and I'm using a 2-piece Heart of Depth and 2-piece Wanderers. I'll be keeping everything else constant except for his weapon. We'll be running 3 tests: Sac Sword, Skyward Blade, and the Alley Flash, for which we'll observe damage with passive on and off. The main points we'll be looking at are his energy recharge, how fast he can put his ult up, and damage per sword. So comparing all the weapons at level 80 out of 80, Sac Sword has a base attack of 400, energy recharge is really high at almost 56%, and you get that cooldown probability. That ER is really high, and along with the elemental skill cooldown reset, you will basically get a lot of energy recharge with the Sacrificial Sword, especially if you're using an ER Sans already. So starting off with the Sacrificial Sword, as we can see, with just one strike of his skill on Sac Sword, he generates half of the burst particles needed. Being able to do that twice if the passive comes into effect will give him a burst right away. But his burst damage per sword is only around 2400, and as you'll see in comparison to the rest, is the lowest. But you get more chances to deal his E, which not only gives a lot of damage, but also generates energy particles, thus getting his ult up consistently. Next, we've got the Skyward Blade. With the Skyward Blade, you get a base attack of over 500 and an energy recharge of over 50%. Now the passive here focuses on the crit rate and the movement speed and the attack speed and the damage of normal and charged attacks. But assuming that Xingqiu is going to be used more off the field, you don't really get to feel that benefit from him. So really the biggest benefit of using the Skyward Blade would be the high base attack and the high energy recharge. It recharges half the ult with one strike of his skill also. It's similar to Sac Sword, with Skyward Blade having only 5% less ER than it, but you get a much higher attack with around 2800 damage per sword. Then we have the Alley Flash, which is the new so-called 5-star weapon in disguise. You get an even higher base attack than the Skyward Blade, although not by much. And the secondary stat of the Alley Flash is Elemental Mastery instead of Energy Recharge. That EM is kind of useful on Xingqiu, especially when he uses his skill, but Xingqiu kind of suffers a lot from not having that extra energy recharge, especially if you want his ult up all the time, which is usually the case in Spiral Abyss. The Alley Flash's passive means that you increase the damage dealt by the character by 12%, but this gets disabled if that character takes damage. On the Alley Flash, his skill only recharges around a third of his ult, but his E hits pretty hard. With a passive off, damage per sword caps at 2800, almost 2900. To keep the Alley Flash's passive on, now I'm switching to Hu Tao to keep him off the field. With the passive on, I get over 3k damage per sword. Here's how the damage all compares side by side. So here's how it all compares in summary. Taking refinements into consideration, the damage of Xingqiu on the Alley Flash will only increase. For Sac Sword, however, the damage doesn't increase, but the likelihood of resetting cooldown does, only by a little bit. His skill cooldown is 21 seconds, and by R4 of Sac Sword, it can occur every 19 seconds. but it has to be triggered by a usage of his E first. Since you have to wait more than 19 seconds anyway to trigger the Sac Sword passive, R4 and R5 of Sac Sword don't make a difference on Xingqiu. If you plan on using the Alley Flash though, you need to manage Xingqiu's skill cooldown well, or maybe even have another battery on the team to charge up his ult. I'm not even gonna bother thinking about the R5 Skyward Blade because the chances of that are very low for a non-whale. So in conclusion, because I have all 3 swords, I'll be giving the Skyward Blade to Xingqiu and the Alley Flash to Bennett for open world playing. This would kind of change though if I had R5 of each of those swords. But in Spiral Abyss, Sacrificial Sword on Xingqiu, along with an ER Sans, makes him insanely reliable as a sub DPS and reaction setup. Even if you lose several hundred per sword, you want to have extreme consistency, which Sac Sword will give. Still, depending on how good your dodging and reflexes are, the Alley Flash's damage output could still make up for it. I'm personally not good at dodging, so Sac Sword is still my choice for Spiral Abyss. So how about you? What do you think of the Alley Flash? Tell me in the comments below and let me know if this video helped you out in any way. If you want to see more of these videos, leave a like or let me know in the comments, and check out my Twitch too since I'm actually trying to get affiliate there. Thanks for watching and I'll see you soon.